Welcome back, Chen, for the second half of the talk. We're going to do about 45 minutes to try and have a few questions at the end. So we'll like save our questions.
Yeah.
Keep our ammunition dry.
Should be time, yeah. Thanks. Welcome back. Thank you, everybody.
I think we meant to clap.
I don't know. I love the rosemary branches. I mean, I can smell it subconsciously. It's kind of aromatherapy for me, you know. So it's really, really good. I'm sure it does make a big difference. You know. I hope you enjoy yourself this evening. How many of you went to the David Icke show in Wembley? Did you go there? Yeah, that's fantastic. My daughter is a complete skeptic. She's not interested in anything I say. She thinks I'm crazy. She just says, you know, everything I talk about, she calls out David Icke stuff, whether it's about UFOs or ghosts or anything. Even when I mention David Icke, she calls it that David Icke stuff. Well, she's an 18-year-old girl with attitude, and so I'm glad she's got a mind of her own. So she sometimes says I sound like David Icke, you know, but I don't. All right. If you think I do, it's just a coincidence, nothing to worry about. Where were we? Yeah, we talking about all the. I was talking to someone in the break, and he was talking about all the different diseases, including psychological conditions like ADD and ADHD and OCD and DDLF and PDLQQY and all these other diseases that are coming out with these similar little acronyms that don't really tell you much. They say these diseases are on the rise. They say other diseases are on the rise. 100 years ago, if charcoal leukemia, it was a medical curiosity. Today, it's every day. It's hundreds of kids every day die of it. It's like no one asks why. Why this is happening? Well, Dr. Len Horowitz has asked why, and I think he incorporates a lot of what he has discovered. Incorporates into what I've discovered. Thanks, Andy. Cheers. As I was saying, Tricky Dicky here officially ended the biological warfare program in 1970, but in fact, he carried it on and he escalated it. This is in line with the revolution in the document from the American War College, which I talked about in part one, the revolution in military affairs, which talked about a departure from the warfare that they've known in the past, big battlefield exchanges of fire, nuclear weapons, things like that. That was all out. What was going to come in was something much more sophisticated, much more subtle, but equally, if not more destructive. And that is sophisticated biological warfare, psychological warfare, non-lethal weapons, supposedly, and electromagnetic warfare. Now, the electromagnetic side of things, I don't have time to go into, but that's a very interesting element indeed. But as far as biological diseases it goes down to these designer viruses that incubate for a long period of time and become pathological after such a long time it's impossible to say for sure where the virus came from. Now, it's not just, as it's been found out lately, it's not secret, a lot of people know some cancers are caused by viruses, and this was not lost on Fort Detrick and the biological warfare program. Interesting little fact, actually. The Fort Detrick, in 1970, when the biological warfare program was changed in formation, it wasn't cancelled like I explained before. It was simply a change in formation from an offensive formation to a defensive formation, which I've explained in practical terms makes no difference at all. That very same year, another organisation moved into Fort Detrick as well. That organisation was the American National Cancer Institute. This is a research organisation designed to find treatments for cancer, and it moved in and became bedfellows with the biological warfare program. Very, very interesting indeed that such neighbours would choose each other. The revolution in military affairs also mentioned immunodeficiency as a weapon, viruses which cause immunodeficiency. And this is the interesting bit. An organisation got involved with Fort Detrick called Litton Industries, which is a pharmaceutical company and is also involved in biological warfare. And one man who's working for them is this fella here. Now this is Dr. Robert Gallo. And he was involved in projects, as Len Horowitz, Dr. Dr. Len Horowitz reveals, in the 1970s he was involved with Lytton Industries and the American government to produce a new hepatitis B vaccine, which he tested in the 1970s, and he gave them to several different groups of people as the test subjects. The groups of people were, he gave it to a group of people in Africa, and he also injected it into male homosexuals in California. Strangely enough, in the early 1980s, a new disease emerged called AIDS. And it first emerged in those very same groups of people who were given that hepatitis B vaccine. And what's more, Dr. Robert Gallo is credited for discovering AIDS.
One of them.
There's a Lytton Industry stooge, who developed the vaccine, which was tested on some people who coincidentally developed this disease later on. And now, of course, that disease is spreading much more fiercely. Where are we at? As I said, what we're looking at here basically is that, in summary, disease is a weapon. It's been used as a weapon. It's far more sophisticated than what it was when it first started out with anthrax and things like that. We now have a situation where there are viruses being developed, not just viruses, but things such as prions. Prion is an infectious agent which causes mad cow disease, and also what's called Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease in humans, which is the equivalent. We're looking at a situation where these new diseases are apparently emerging just out of nature. It's just appearing in our world. No one has commented on where they think they come from. But as Dr. Len Horowitz has discovered, there's an enormous link there between them and the biological warfare industry. And also research organisations that supposedly for the good of our health, like the CDC, like the National Cancer Institute, are involved as well, and the World Health Organization. And I think this ties in very much with the zombie issue, which I'm going to explain more about. Now, one of the goals, I think, a lot of people who may be involved in, like Gallo, or maybe other people who may be secretly involved in these projects, they may not actually be bad people. They may be people who have been sold a yarn, and they believe that they're doing what they do for good. It seems hard to believe, but if you look at some of the discussion in terms of environmental problems, because during the last few decades, of course, the environmental problems have become an enormous issue. And this actually is incidentally first mentioned in the report from Iron Mountain. It talks about maybe using environmental problems, engineering them as a substitute for war. This substitute for war they're looking at, environmental problems could be that substitute. So we have a war against environmental destruction. We have a war against carbon emissions and things like that. Which is all too familiar. These things have become intensely political, especially carbon dioxide and global warming. So I think these are a lie. And I think but the fact of the matter is people believe it. And a lot of very powerful people believe it. Water shortage, erosion of topsoil, biodiversity, things like that. These are, some of these problems are genuine, and they do need to be addressed. But the people doing the addressing maybe have the wrong idea about what's causing it and how to solve them. Now, this is all linked in with population. As Bill Gates infamously said in his equation, he put an equation on the board. Environmental damage equals P times C times E times R or something. Population times energy minus resources. I can't remember the actual equation. But it was the same speech where he mentioned that they're using vaccines to reduce population, which is an interesting little slip of the tongue there from old Bill. There's an idea, that the general calculation that often comes out is this world can support a maximum population of 500 million people, right? That's less than 10% of what we have now. Now, I don't believe that. I should point out from the start, I don't think the world is even overpopulated as it is now with 7 billion. It looks that way because of our lifestyle, because of the fact that we are living, I think we've been manipulated to live in a very, very environmentally damaging way. And I think report from Iron Mountain may be a reason why our lifestyle has been engineered in this way. It's it all ties in with things such as things I've spoken about in other live lectures to do with energy, to do with the fact that Nikola Tesla and his technology, cold fusion, things like that. And also farming, organic farming methods like terra preta and humus, which are very, very powerful fertilisers, which increase the yield of farmland a dozenfold. These are technologies which would, all the problems to do with the environment would vanish overnight if these technologies were used, but they're not being used, they're being suppressed. I think that ties in with the report from Iron Mountain. They're engineering environmental destruction for political reasons. And political reasons are they want to did you mention fracking? Yeah, that's a big subject, but to go into, that's a part of it too. Ian R. Crane talks a lot about that. But anyway, there's this drive to sort of like say, well, we need fewer people in the world. Bill Gates is one of it. And it has an acceptable public face. It has a cuddly image, a shop window, and that is organisations like Population Matters. And their president is David Attenborough, that lovely sweet man who sits in the jungle with gorillas cuddling them, and playing Happy Families with them and makes these wildlife programmes. Saying things like, please have less children, would you? Or we'll give you birth control and education. But of course the urgency and the severity of the problem, or the perceived problem, which doesn't exist, I think, it's generated a new brand of environmental extremism, and it's not the same people it used to be doing it. It's not these nice people with glasses and beards, and life jackets, sailing their boats into the path of whaling ships. You don't get that anymore. The environmental eco-warrior today, they're rich, they're powerful businessmen, they're politicians, they're academics, and I think they meet secretly in boardrooms with suits and ties, and they say, let's cut the crap. We're not going to be able to do this while maintaining liberal piety. We're going to need to use far more extreme measures, and we're going to have to do it secretly. And I think that is what is going on at Fort Detrick, and I think it ties in with the zombie issue, as I'll explain. Of course, there are bad cops in the official population reduction movement, like Bill Gates, who's saying, we need less people in the world. He stands on stage and we need to reduce population. He has actually said people need to die. I mean, he'll say afterwards, he'll qualify the remark, I didn't mean quite that, we need less people, and people who die don't need to be replaced, but I think he does want people to die. In that case, there's an obvious question we should ask it. Save the planet, Bill, kill yourself. All these people in the secret board, if they're so keen to reduce population, why don't they come up first and volunteer? You have the idea, come on, you come first. Kill yourself. But they don't, do they? There's other people who don't. But it's possible that there's something even more complicated going on, even more extreme than even Dr. Len Horowitz has discovered, and it extends into other realms. This is a big complicated subject. I'll cover it in as much detail as I can, but I will mention other sources you can go to find out more. More and more people around the world have been coming down with strange diseases, as I've said. Some of them doctors don't recognise. Now, one of those is Morgellons disease or Morgellons syndrome, or just Morgellons, it's called. And this is an illness where people suffer from, it starts off with feelings of itching and burning in the skin, crawling and numbness. And what happens is the areas of the skin where you're suffering this discomfort break out in these lesions. It's very painful. They take a long time to heal. When they heal, another one breaks out somewhere else. Very, very unpleasant condition to have. And unfortunately, most physicians do not recognise it as a proper disease. They say it is psychosomatic, which means basically you're making it happen by the power of your mind. You think, it's caused by hysteria, basically, among people with mental illness, which is causing these symptoms to emerge. I think not, and there's several different reasons. There's several reasons why I think not. These are strange. These objects here are very, very hard to actually explain what these are. There's some of the objects that emerge from the lesions which Morgellons sufferers actually experience. Some of them have actually captured these strange things, whatever they are. They resemble fibres or strands of material, strands of textile. In fact, some some of the debunkers of this in the medical world say that these are nothing more than bits of cotton fabric from dressings that we put over the lesions. When the scab forms, the fabric gets trapped in the scab. That's all it is, it's nothing more than that. Well, no, these things move. They appear to be intelligent. You can actually see film of them moving. They've been captured. There's a guy called Cliff Carnicum who set up an entire laboratory for the purpose of analysing this. There's a lady called Sophia Smallstorm, who no one seems to have heard of for a few months, actually, for some reason. I'm worried about her, actually. She's been speaking about this as well. She's been visiting Morgellons sufferers. She's been collecting some specimens of these and other medical specimens, samples of this strange material that comes out of the lesions. It's not. Sometimes you get these fibres come out. There's also other things like strange crystalline structures, objects come out, tiny little gemstones almost, and sometimes like little bits of glass, and sometimes even small mechanical devices come out of these lesions. And even it's reported, creatures, insects, come out of these lesions. They just pop out when these lesions burst. Very strange indeed. Now, let's say Cliff Carnicum, Sophia Smallstorm, they've analysed these strange emissions, these strange discharges that come out of these lesions of Morgellons sufferers. And they've come to the conclusion these are actually a new form of life. The word is synthetic biology or pseudo-life. There's no way nature could produce something like this. They are, what they are is they're incredibly, Sophia Smallstorm says they're eukarya, which is opposed to, archaea. Eukarya is the life that we live in now. Living organisms like ourselves are called eukarya. Don't ask me the details, right? I'm just quoting what she says. But biologists call living organisms eukarya. But before that, there were things like archaea. And these are pre-cellular life. And it's extremely tough. They can live in volcanoes, they can live in nuclear reactors. And these things are formed of eukarya. You can't burn them. They seem to be immune to very high temperatures, which at least you can produce in the home with a flame. They don't burn. It's really, really strange. And it's causing an awful lot of misery for people. But I mean, this could be a part of some kind of program to change the nature of life on Earth, and maybe even the nature of the Earth itself, which the governments are involved in. For whatever reason, they want to change the very biology of this planet into something else, something artificial. There's a quite open and popular movement now called transhumanism, which is about allowing technology to replace the human body and human brain. There's a guy called Ray Kurzweil who talks about it as if it's something totally wonderful without asking the question, you're talking about replacing humanity with something else. Well, how different would it be? Would we still be human as we know human is? And whose benefit is it for? Is it for our benefit, or is it for the benefit of those who rule us? Is that the girl I met at the pub earlier? Tell her I'll call her back later. Something else strange has happened. Now, I don't know how many of you know this guy. He's a friend of mine, actually. He's a ufologist called David Griffin. And he's recently found something very, very interesting connected with what I've been speaking about this evening, but it relates to the Falklands War. Now, the Falklands War was a strange event which the official motive and politics behind it just don't make sense. The Falkland Islands are a small group of islands in the South Atlantic which have been settled by British settlers and are a British protectorate, yet for some reason Argentina, which is the country in South America nearby, wants to possess these islands, and in 1982 invaded and occupied the islands. The British government under Margaret Thatcher sent a naval task force and armed forces to depose the occupation. And the question is, everyone said, well, why did Argentina want those islands so badly? They were willing to risk everything to take them over. And once they'd taken them over, why did Britain go to such efforts to take them back? Now, according to the official story, the government did it out of the kindness of their heart. Because for the sake of the people who lived on the islands, who unanimously want to stay British. But since when has the government ever done things before out of the goodness of their heart because of what we want and what we care about?
For 1,800 people.
Exactly. I mean, who believed? I mean, it just didn't make sense, and I knew there had to be another motive behind it. Now, I thought it was coincidence they struck oil in the islands just before the invasion. And what's more, I made a prediction because they struck oil again into another oil field in 2008. Of course, that's when the Falkland issue escalated again. But David Griffin has discovered something even more, because it's all to do with an island called Southern Thule, which lies slightly south of the Falkland Islands, actually. And what's happened was it's part of the Crown dependencies of the Falkland Islands. Argentina had a base on there, which they set up about 10 years before the invasion. And Southern Thule is so remote and inaccessible, no one ever bothered to go down and kick them off. There was only a handful of scientists and a small squad of soldiers anyway, so no one bothered with them. But after the end of the occupation, when the Argentine was disposed, something strange happened. HMS Endurance, which is the polar research vessel for the Royal Navy, the polar patrol vessel and research vessel for the Royal Navy, took a group of special forces, British special forces, from the Falkland Islands. I think it's about 2,000 miles or so, actually, or 1,500 miles, down to Southern Thule, where they landed on the island and basically threatened the tiny Argentine base on there. And of course, there was only about 8 guys in that base. Of course, they surrendered. They had no other choice. They'd been suicide otherwise, because there was an entire squad of special forces there. They were captured. They were taken on board the ship and returned to Argentina. But before they went, the special forces, which were Royal Marine SBS, Special Boat Squadron, planted some bombs and they blew the base sky high with an explosion far greater than it really was needed, which is very, very odd indeed. Now I know who she is. I'm just going to check the camera. Turn the camera over. Hope we're doing all right. Oh. So David Griffin started looking into this because he actually met a guy, one of the soldiers who'd served in the Falklands, and who said there were aliens down there. There were little creatures, they called them blues, living on that island. And it was all to do with this oil. There's a special kind of oil called sentient fluid or nano oil. No one's sure exactly what it is, but it's a very, very strange substance indeed, which seems to be locked on the bottom of the sea. It seems to be in polar regions, in vast quantities, under the ice, frozen. And apparently it seems to be activated. And this is a fluid that has an intelligence, according to David Griffin. And several other people have spoken about this as well. It's actually the AMACH organisation and the basic series of films by Miles Johnston, which actually explored this. If you go to Megawatts 1066 on YouTube, it has all the details on there. And I was going to say about Morgellons, there's plenty. If you Google Morgellons or Sophia Smallstorm or Cliff Carnicum, you'll get a lot of more details of that as well. But the sentient fluid is a strange substance. It seems to have the ability to decide to choose what it does. It can move by itself. It seems to have an awareness of what's around it. And shortly after David Griffin came out with his revelations, there was an incident in the Gulf of Mexico where somebody posted a message on a web forum saying, something's just gone berserk in the Gulf of Mexico, there's a sea battle going on there. And this was somebody who claimed to be the boyfriend of someone working, well, the girlfriend rather, of someone working in the French embassy in the United States. Of course, anyone can say things like this, but apparently someone checked out the ship movements in the air. Apparently there was something strange was going on there. Ships were being diverted away from an area, basically where the Gulf oil spill had taken place. And something very odd was happening. There was a French submarine invaded US territorial waters, and it was attacked by a helicopter, dropping depth charges on it. Almost sunk it, but it managed to escape. But then they tried to board the submarine when it came up to the surface, and That's US Special Forces trying to. But then there was also a German and an Israeli submarine in the area, and they opened fire on the Americans, and it all went a bit crazy. It's hard to know what happened, but the French submarines managed to escape, but they took something with them that the US wanted back. They took it to a ship a few miles in international waters. The ship then set sail for France. But then halfway through the voyage, the captain radioed French Naval Command asking permission to jettison the cargo overboard, saying that it had come to life. Or what are they talking about? I don't know, but it's something very, very strange going on. This sentient fluid. It's a complicated subject that goes into the Marconi company as well, which is a big radio, you know, the radio companies works in engineering and things like that. There are a number of suicide, a very, very high rate of suicide among the staff. And this is where strange behaviour starts coming in, which ties in with the zombie thing very, very well. So I think there may be a connection there. And this is where we come back to. I said earlier on I was going to talk about this a bit more. The zombie movies. There's the most interesting one is this one. Just go back to the picture actually. Go back to the picture. Show you just to remind you. This is, if you remember this picture from earlier. Oh, sorry. Well, that's okay. That's Resident Evil, which is a series of zombie movies. There's about 6 in a series now. Now, what's interesting about this one is a sci-fi zombie movie. Something called the T-virus is developed in underground base by something called the Umbrella Corporation, which is this evil kind of pharmaceutical company with secret experiments, genetic experiments. It's accidentally released, and a zombie apocalypse ensued. But one of the people infected is the heroine of the story, which is a lady called Alice, played by Emlyn-Jones. And she's infected by the T-virus, but she doesn't become a zombie. Instead, she becomes an enhanced human. She effectively becomes a superhero. She's faster, she can run really fast, she's much stronger than an average person would be, far more intelligent, far more quicker thinking, faster reflexes. And later on in the series of films, she actually becomes psychic. She develops clairvoyant and telekinetic powers. So, what we could be looking at is an element of transhumanism, and it all ties in with these designer diseases, including Morgellons and the sentient fluid. What it means is, what are the zombies? Well, are the zombies the byproduct? Are the zombies the side effect of this? This is certainly the case in this film, because the Alice character in this film is like super, thanks to the T-virus, but everyone else who catches it turns into a zombie. So that's a very, very difficult, it's a very, very interesting sort of way to, it makes me wonder where the connections lie, where do the boundaries lie between these different things. Another interesting element in the film is that because the Umbrella Corporation, the people running it, are so evil, they're these evil mad scientists. In one of them, I think in the third film, or fourth film, they come up with the idea of turning the zombies into slaves. They can have an unending series of slaves which they can use for whatever purpose they want to exploit as in industry, on farmlands, and things like that. And so they try to turn the zombies into slaves, and maybe these films are closer to reality than we think. I mean, I'm not saying that the writers of these movies necessarily know, are necessarily initiated into these secret operations, but they may pick something up in the sort of like morphic resonance. That's why I'm always interested in fiction and stories and where they go. It should not be ignored. So, what they basically are we're looking at is a type of disease. That's the bottom line. It's kind of, we're looking at a disease. Just turn the camera over.